Final Fantasy XIV is changing. Now, it's not super obvious, but it's through subtle design changes that I think we're seeing a pivot in overall direction for Final Fantasy XIV. Hello everybody, I am Jmulls of Jmulls Gaming, and we just had the second live letter for 7.2 of Final Fantasy XIV Dawntrail, where they showcased a bunch of content including the new Eureka/Bosja-like content, the Occult Crescent, as well as the new Crafting and Gathering content, Cosmic Exploration. Now, the content itself is rather similar to what we've had before, with things like Bosja and Ishgard Restoration, but there's a few key design changes that I think won't amount to much by themselves, but they indicate a trend towards more cooperative gameplay, but also embracing the idea of the MMO. Now let's get into this and talk about specifics. First up, let's talk about the Occult Crescent. It's an entire new zone with phantom jobs, new critical engagements, a new 48-man raid, and yeah, Occult Crescent has a lot of design similarities to previous forms of content like Eureka and Bosja, but it's when you dive into specific changes they made. And when I talk about them, you may end up going, Jmulls, that's not that big of a deal, but hear me out. So critical engagements, these boss fights that spawn in this new zone. Back in Bosja, the way you actually were assigned to a critical engagement was that it would just pop up, you would click on it, on the little pop-up, and you'd queue into it. If you got selected, you'd be teleported to the fight. Well, that's not the case with the Occult Crescent. Now a critical engagement will spawn in the world, and you'll have to actively go there, stand in a ripple AoE, and you'll be partied up with everyone that joins in. That may sound like inconvenience, but it's that kind of friction that breeds social events and moments in MMORPGs. Seeing the people that want to do the critical engagement actively move around the zone to that singular destination ideally should give a feeling of the zone being alive and populated, and that's a feeling you want in an MMORPG. You want to feel as if you're playing a part of a greater role. I think far too often, Final Fantasy XIV can feel as if it's far too based on instant gameplay. And I've advocated and talked about the desire for more open world-esque content in this game, and design directions like this in the Occult Crescent lend themselves to what I'm talking about here. Again, it sounds very small and minor on the surface, but it's little decisions and changes like this, and nuances in designs like this that add up with each other. In the Occult Crescent, you are rewarded for actively playing with others every step of the way. That, to me, is extremely healthy for an MMO. If you're just fighting regular mobs, well, good news. If you're in a party of people that are close to each other in their overall knowledge level, you can get an XP chain, so the more enemies you conquer together, the more and more rewards you get. So you are actively incentivized to play with each other, and to actively help each other out, and not just smurf the content for a bunch of carries. And they have a button you can press when you're in these parties to just scale all of your knowledge levels appropriately so you register as a balanced party. So it's not inconvenient, it's just making playing together more optimal. You combine that with fates just generally going faster with more people, and then, throughout your efforts of actually doing the Occult Crescent, you acquire a resource, and when people use 16 of these things, they spawn the Forked Tower, or allow it to be activated. And if you want to do that raid, you are incentivized to participate in that because you have a higher chance of being selected for the 48-man raid if you're one of the people that brought one of the 16 items. Again, each step of the way actively and positively reinforces the idea that you should be playing together. That is what Final Fantasy XIV should embrace more of, and I think it is. When the game feels more rewarding, and I think this is true for every MMO, when the game feels more rewarding to play with other people, when it feels natural and just like the obvious thing to do, that can start communication, that can start dialogue happening between people, and that's how friendships can be formed, and that's how moments in MMOs that shine the brightest happen. It's when people just simply play together and talk to each other. You don't need to make it so people have a conversation or like party up and make a friend every 5 minutes or so. You're just given the opportunity for events like that to happen naturally and organically, to where it doesn't feel overly forced to anything, it just feels fun and right. And the more I think about 7.2, the more optimistic and positive I become, because I'm noticing this design direction find itself in other pieces of content as well. And now let's pivot on over to Cosmic Exploration. Now, Cosmic Exploration in overall concept is extremely similar to Ishgard Restoration. There's a bunch of different missions, they just involve crafting and gathering, and you're trying to achieve a server goal with a bunch of other people from your server to build up this location over time. And we'll get a new location with each patch for Cosmic Exploration. We have the moon up first, at least I think it's the moon, and then in 7.3 we go somewhere else. Now, I think Cosmic Exploration overall looks perfectly okay, but again, a couple design choices here that I think are rather smart by Square Enix. Let's talk about the mech. Yeah, you get a mech suit in this, by the way. Now, personally, it didn't look all that cool to me because you're just kind of mining things and clearing away objectives. It is Cosmic Exploration, so that's kind of what the content's supposed to be. But an easy way to get people to be sick of something is to overuse it or have it be too readily available. So if we could just always have access to the mech, it would at some point lose its luster and sheen and just become standard place and a bit dull and uninteresting. However, taking inspiration of the 1v1 duels from Bosja, you buy a ticket, you are put into a pool of people, and if you are selected, you then get to pilot the mech. And if not, you have a higher chance of being selected the next go-around. It makes the mech, ideally again, feel more important and cool, and if you're selected, it feels like a cool moment for you as everyone watches on as you're in the freaking mech suit. MMOs should encourage and foster an environment where people look at others and go, oh, that's really cool, I want that to be me. It's little moments like that that can spark inspiration and a desire for people to participate more in pieces of content. Again, I don't think the path to glory here for Square Enix of Final Fantasy XIV will be found in any singular one giant new piece of content. I think it's this design direction that will find itself in every piece of content in this game, up and down, left to right, in and out. This is the type of stuff that is super important in my opinion, but can largely be overlooked by a lot of people when you only view singular instances of it. But it's all of these little things that add up over time that create a more cohesive and enjoyable social experience. Because the fact of the matter is, playing MMORPGs with other people, far more often than not, if done right, is more enjoyable. And I don't think the goal should just be to play with other people when you're tackling really hard content. It should be you're incentivized and just have the desire to play with other people organically because it's the natural thing to do. So having that like emergency quest that can happen during Cosmic Exploration, and you feel as if you're part of a greater whole going towards a singular unified effort, that can be cool. Stuff like not always having access to the mech, being cognizant that other people are working and living in this game world, that's important. It makes it so the mech doesn't overstay its welcome, still feels cool and unique and interesting, and puts emphasis on a singular individual. Asymmetrical design when it comes to stuff like this can be weirdly powerful. And I don't want to like overstate how good this content actually is. I think for quite a few people, and maybe myself included after a period of time, Cosmic Exploration and things like the Occult Crescent may just end up being viewed as a bit too grindy and stuff like that. But I don't want these individual design ideas, these nuggets of social interaction, to be lost or ignored. And when I'm looking at the patch cadence of Final Fantasy XIV at this point, with Dawntrail, we don't have everything like ironed out. We don't have all the specifics, but it seems as if there is a centralized effort by Square Enix to have something social with each of these patches, outside of just raiding, and I mean regular raiding. In 7.1, we had Chaotic Cloud of Darkness. 7.2, we're going to have the Occult Crescent and also Cosmic Exploration, which will be updated, Cosmic Exploration that is, with each new patch going forward for Dawntrail. Then in 7.3, we will have the new Deep Dungeon, which is a long roguelike-esque dungeon that can also be used for leveling. Again, a multiplayer-based piece of content. And while I don't think we know specifically what's coming in 7.4, I imagine that's going to be the patch for the Variant and Criterion Dungeon, which again, multiplayer content. Then 7.5 Beastmaster, and we'll have even more Occult Crescent. It seems to me as if their idea for what they want to do with Dawntrail's patches is to vary up what you're actively doing, what the new content is, but have people play together. And I think that is a smart design direction here. In 7.2, we have that more large-scale, open-world feeling content with the Occult Crescent. 7.3, we have Deep Dungeon. Then 7.4, I imagine, would be the Variant and Criterion Dungeon. And then 7.5 is more Occult Crescent. So it's changing the style and flow of the game, at least with what's new. It's not like the old content will be unviable or unplayed, but the new stuff will be different, have a different feel to it. But all along the way, incentivizing group play. It's an interesting direction, at least in my opinion. And sure, has it been perfect up to this point? No, absolutely not. I think community perception will gradually start to shift and become a bit more positive as this content starts to come online. And yeah, the release schedule for all of this stuff is controversial, and I don't think it's perfect. Far from it. I think some of this content needs to come online way early in the patch cycle. I think Occult Crescent and Cosmic Exploration should have been here already. And while as the patches keep coming out from this point on, this will become less and less of an issue, as I keep yapping on about, when we get to 8.0, this conversation will rear its ugly head yet again if it's not addressed. People want to play this game, they want interesting things to do while they're playing this game. And while on the whole, I think Dawntrail at the end of it all will have a great amount of varied and interesting content. Again, so long as they stick the landing here, the execution here and there, and especially when it comes to releasing it, hasn't been ideal. But if we can look past that, I think we're seeing a small but important pivot when it comes to overall design direction for Final Fantasy XIV. For the longest time, this game had been kind of streamlining itself and gearing itself in such a way to incentivize and reward solo play. And like now that it's done that, it's expanding its multiplayer offerings and trying to incentivize people playing together. There's nothing wrong with playing a bit of the game solo, anything like that. But as an MMORPG, I think it is important for this game to incentivize group play, and not just in a gamey sort of way where you feel obligated to. It should feel natural and just the right thing to do, and that could be a really hard line to balance yourself on, but it's important to hit that balance. But offering varied content, changing up what you're doing each patch, having small design choices in the content we've talked about today in this video about 7.2 stuff, all that stuff adds up over time in my opinion. And I'm rather optimistic. And with that, I think I'll call the video there for the day. Thank you all for tuning in. My pleasure for making the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps channel out and help support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. Stay safe, have a great day. Leave a comment down below with your thoughts, your opinions on what we've talked about today. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your opinions, and your perspectives. Stay safe, have a great day. Leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again.